Okay. Yeah, good.
Okay. So our challenge was to put Switzerland on the electricity map, which displays carbon intensity of the electricity mix in live data, so hourly resolution, maybe delayed a little bit, but at least. And Switzerland is currently missing because data from NSOE is not good enough, so it shows doesn't show the smaller power plants. So about 1/3 of the production in Switzerland is just missing. And this high-skilled team here, people from BKW, Swissgrid, and Swiss Federal Office of Energy, and others, took the challenge. And the approach is as follows. So we have in blue the NSOE data that only explains like 2/3 of the production for this is 1 hour. So 1/3 is missing, and we don't know, like, is it hydro that we're missing or is it nuclear? So fortunately, nuclear is not missing because there's only big ones. So the first thing we did, unfortunately, the top here, the Swissgrid values, they are not live data. So we had to estimate them from what is available. It's like import, export, stuff that's available in NSOE. So we managed to get the red area to the black one, which says an acceptable error. And then with the red one, we get to the overall energy statistic of SFOE, like yearly data, and we could say that like 65% of it is hydro, a little bit is fossil, and some others. And then we could calculate the CO2 emissions from what is missing, at least estimate, which makes at least an approach how we could put Switzerland on. Next.
Integration North app was also not too successfully tackled, and distributed analytics for asset management.
Yeah, I sent this one in a direct message in Slack.
Okay, so oops, sorry.
I think someone get it from someone else could present first.
It all came a bit together all at the same time. As you can imagine.
Maybe the next person.
Yeah, maybe we do the presentation of the next person, and then we'll. Somehow it didn't show up there. And actually, it's two groups who are going to present the anomaly detection in the smart meter data. I don't know if it makes sense that you start or
We start. It's fine.
so make sure you're on top of the video.
Yeah, very good. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. We tackle the anomaly detection in smart meter data. And so it's basically looking for outliers in large amounts of data. And basically, we started just by analyzing. Oh, sorry. We started just by analyzing the data. And the data set included, here's just a sample of how the data set looked. We just had a timestamp and the kilowatt per hour usage. And this graph, what it shows is basically the kilowatt hours and the frequency that each individual kilowatt hour was repeated, I guess. So here we can see that low usage is the most usage. So it's idle for most of the time. And here maybe you can tell, oh, it's during working hours during the week, and maybe this is on the weekend or at night. So yeah.
reverse frequency, we found the pattern for working day and non-working day, means weekends and holidays. So the upper side is the working day. So we can see that there's even in working day, we have the idle status, also have the peak and low behavior. And in the weekend days, there's also something on. So further on, we investigate the pattern in detail by Brugg and Whisker Approach, so which show the data distribution screws and the outliers, which are the white points.
So I'll tell how we about several approaches on how to find outliers. So on this plot, so each dot is one day, and on x-axis there is a mean of the reading on this day. On the y-axis, the standard deviation on this day. So you can see the green points. These are the days on which the meter, like the office, was idle. So nothing was running. So the readings were low and not deviating. Then here you have a cluster of working hours, working days, which are blue points. And now we say that everything which is out of the cluster is an outlier. So with this approach, which was very agnostic, we found days with unusual average consumption. And after looking at those days just by a naked eye, we saw that these were, for example, days in between Christmas and New Year, when some people actually showed up to the office. So some people actually work on those days. And the consumption, electricity consumption, was following the same pattern as usual, but with the lower numbers. And then some days, something was wrong with the idle. So maybe someone forgot to close the fridge door or something like this. So we also detected days where meter was not running. And I want to say that this method is also, we use it for 24 hours, but it can be adjusted for other time windows. Another approach, which was to work with single readings, is called Monte Carlo. And it's basically, you look at the meter, the reading, and you ask yourself, how frequently has this reading appeared before? So if it's not frequent, then you call it an outlier. So the cool thing about this approach is that blazingly fast, you can implement it on a Raspberry Pi attached to your smart meter. It's adaptable, meaning you change your habits, your outliers change with time, and you can tune your anxiety level, meaning what do you call an outlier, easily. And another cool thing, it's actually implemented in the Meter OS. This is an app developed by the Next group. So here I pass the microphone. Ah, wait, forgot. Yeah, this is us. Team 14.1 Tigers.
Here, like that.
All right, you're on. Cool.
That's because you were tweeting.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you? All good? Still awake? Excellent, cool. So I brought Maru with me. I'm Ray. We are part of the team of Meter OS, which the previous group actually talked about quickly already. And we are also working in the challenge number 14, how to analyze smart meter data and also do an anomaly detection. Now, what is the most important thing if you do anomaly detection? Well, you need to know what's normal, right? So we basically started our approach with a manual data analysis. So what this is about, I will quickly show you afterwards. But it's important here to say that we basically tried everything you normally do if you're either crazy or an electrical engineer. So we really did a lot of stuff on the data. And then we put all these insights into a predictive model, which Marius is going to talk about later on. Now about the expert analysis, as we called it. So we basically started with weekly data structuring. So we took the data and put it in a format we could work with. We then applied a fast Fourier transformation, correlated the fast Fourier transformation, were actually able to generate some first anomaly detection. And then with this information on the weekly basis, we went into the timeline again, so the timeline again from the frequency spectrum, and were then able to find out where the anomalies are. And this actually gave us some important insight into what was then implemented into the predictive model. And now, Marius, please tell us more about it.
Yeah, thanks. So actually, we implemented a modern data pipeline with a smart meter simulator, data streaming platform with Kafka, and then the anomaly detection model, which was implemented or developed by the previous group. And we implemented on top of a Kubernetes cluster. And additionally to that, we implemented a UI, which can be used. You can find the link on our project page. Yeah, let's go. Continue. So here are some screenshots from the UI. You can actually just investigate the data, see what's going on and the anomalies. This is just a prototype below here, but above you can also query real data. The anomalies are actually grouped by severities, so you can find out how severe we think your anomaly is, and yeah, you can then try to put measures in place for that.
Cool, and then last but not least, we also got our head around what we can actually do now with this thing we did. So we thought about potential customers. We identified two groups. One would be the DSOs, distribution grid operators. They could actually provide a smart data analysis server or a service or a smart layer to the end customers. It could be white labeling, and yeah, it would be in the end in a fully open electricity market, some kind of customer binding there. The second group would be the smart meter manufacturers themselves, and they would actually be able to sell an add-on to the smart meter, and also in a white labeling approach, basically expanding their value chain. We also did some calculations based on a, let's say, a sample project with PWZ, for example. But as we're running out of time, I will just leave it on the screen and you can read it yourself. So thank you very much for your attention.
Why did you guys choose Kubernetes for the data collection?
So basically, we just deployed the model and applications on top of Kubernetes because it's an easy thing to do to run applications in your cloud, in the cloud. Yeah.
Ready-made.
Okay. Are there more questions? Yeah.
Could you extend 2-3 sentences of the last page?
Yeah, I'm giving the mic to Ray.
Well, if we're given the time, yes, sure. So basically the idea is, well, we started actually to say, what is the project about? What is the amount of money that is going to be spent by EWZ and how many smart meters are there? So we basically identified the average CapEx cost per smart meter. And then we said, well, as a rough estimate, based on experience as energy managers, you could maybe do something like 10% savings by smart energy data analysis. So we then said, okay, we have some information in the city of Zurich, how much electricity consumption is there, also what's the average tariff. So you could basically get all the metrics you need for the business case to say, well, On average, a customer can save 150 Swiss francs per year per meter. And then we said, well, let's apply a consumer fee for the service of smart meter data analysis, which could be, for example, 100 Swiss francs. So all these numbers are kind of like to get a business case, not, let's say, scientifically justifiable, but it's more like to get the first business case. So that would result in net savings of 50 Swiss francs per meter per year for the end consumer. On the other hand, you have the revenue created out of this model. So you could do, for example, revenue split between the DSO and the meter OS of 90/10, which then would say, for example, for EWZ, investing 194 million Swiss francs, they would have an ROI of 8 years on the investment, and meter OS in turn would generate 2.7 million Swiss francs net revenue per year. That's the idea behind that.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
I'm happier with the microphone arrangements this time, you'll be pleased to hear. So yeah, our group was looking at asset management and predicting assets remaining life or predicting asset failure using artificial intelligence. So in particular, we were focusing on transformers. And there were two parts to our challenge, really. The first part was to try and use a system that employed federated analytics. So this was a new paradigm for data analysis. And what we used were multiple diverse, private, separate, dispersed data sets from all around the world, all containing transformer data. So we were sharing knowledge on those transformer databases, but we weren't actually getting access to the full data sets. And we also needed to try and extract value from the data set to improve asset management. Some of the things we wanted to achieve were benchmarking, performance estimations perhaps by manufacturer or other different categories, looking at failures, early or late failures, and also trying to get an understanding of early warnings for failures in transformers that were reaching the end of their life. So the ambition was to access the transformer data, but without actually transferring any of the specific details of the transformer to a central repository. The technology that we used for it was called TAC. It's the technology that was provided by a company called Bio, which is the Challenger's partner. So this had the confidential data in multiple repositories, as I said, and we used the system to access the data. So we tried to go through a workflow, and we got part of the way through that workflow. Firstly, we needed to unlock the data, then we needed to understand how the data was structured, we needed to understand the trends, indicators, and then we needed to parse the data according to different aspects of the different characteristics of the transformers. We then wanted to get on to prediction of the data. We got some of the way through that. So we managed to access the data, we managed to access the meter data, we started looking at different cohorts, and we started to be able to understand risk factors. So we were able to draw graphs of the condition of different transformers to get a score of that condition of the transformer, and also to understand how that changed over time. And it started to give us some really interesting results around certain transformers. This transformer, you can see it's different, its condition, it's been maintenance, it's been done over the course of its lifetime. That maintenance, you could say, is keeping it in a reasonably healthy state. But on the right-hand side, we look at the degradation of the cohort. On average, the degradation was around 0 per annum for the transformers, but you can see the red spot shows this transformer, which is really degrading fast in spite of all of the intervention that the maintenance departments were doing. So where would we like to go? We'd like to get further. We started to look at scatter plots. We started to be able to plot transformers against the acceptable normal condition for the transformers, so faults for different transformers. We'd like to be able to combine that with fault data, and was also labeled fault data, which talks about the real cause, the root cause for the different faults. So we'd like to extend that further afterwards. And also we have in mind a dashboard which could be really useful for an asset management department in a utility, which will allow us to track, for example, historical gas values, as they move towards fault conditions, also looking at things like heat maps to understand what the normal condition for transformers would be, and how a particular transformer under test would progress over the course of its lifetime. So yeah, we didn't get as far as the predictive part of it, the full predictive part of it, but it's certainly something that could be achieved with further work in future. Thank you.
I have to plug this in. Sorry. So it's a bit redundant, but thank you so much. This has been a really, again, a very nice experience for me, at least. I hope it was also for you. Thank you for the really high quality results. I'm super impressed. I knew I would be, I mean, from the conversations I heard, but now the results are really super impressive. I find them very concrete. When I was talking with everybody in the middle of the projects, everybody was a bit despaired, it felt. But what was important for me at that moment, and I think you see it also in the process and in the results, is that every step toward the solution is part of the solution. So each obstacle that you find is also part of the future answer to the problem. So it's really great that you went through all those obstacles. And what I also observed, I mean, it's not the first time, it's not the last time, but how important the access to data and to information is in all senses. So the availability of the data that is being collected at all, that it's that one can find it, that it's clear enough what it's about, that it's readable, that even that you have contact to the person who's the source of the data. So it's actually, I actually have a question there to everybody. I had the feeling one of the issue is that the hack days being on the Friday and the Saturday makes that you cannot contact some of the people you would need to contact. Is this true? Who felt like this? Hands up. One, I see. Okay, that's reasonable. Then
They can start on Thursday.
Sorry?
They can start on Thursday.
They can start on Thursday. Then it's the color. The second question is actually, would it make sense, or would you prefer to have hackathons during the week, like 2 weekdays, rather than over week and weekend? Who hands up for a double weekday? It's a minority of, or 5, 6, but maybe the other ones, they're at home, so they can't reply. Okay, so that was one point. We were expecting to have a little feedback from a participant and a supporter of the Hack Day. Fabian, he left a video, but somehow the video disappeared in the cloud of life and technology. So we're not going to hear his video. What I would like to mention, actually, I would like to talk a bit about some events that are coming up, because these hackathons are something we really promote. Also because it's, I mean, this is a personal observation also, but I find it's crazy how fast we create a sense of familiarity and trust in this group by working together. So even if it's just for that, I find this hackathons fantastic, and we do quite a lot of them. So if you feel like taking part to more of those hackathons,